Good morning / afternoon / evening, everybody. I am SouthPawRacer. Welcome back to another installment of SouthPawRacer's Soapbox. My video on the history of sports car racing is still in the works, but to tide you guys over, I know that a couple of you were asking for more of this kind of video. I decided to smash this one together and, bring this one out because it's been on my mind for a while as well, so enjoy. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Juggernaut that is GT3 racing. Large fields, close competition, clean racing. Pick two. That seems to be the prevailing attitude among a lot of online sim racers in general, but I can see it applied particularly fittingly to one simulated category, GT3. Yes, that's right, you've seen the forum discussions, you've seen the videos from other sim racing YouTubers and streamers. GT3 gonna GT3! These drivers are idiots! Ad infinitum. You're likely to run into at least one fellow sim racer that will warn you to stay away from GT3 because you can't get a clean race in. But if you're looking for pickup racing and don't want to be constrained by the schedules of others, you really don't have many other options outside of low-level open-wheelers or NASCAR. There's no escaping it if you're a sim racer. iRacing's got an official partnership with the Stefan Rattel organization and runs the online Blancpain GT series. Race Room Racing Experience has got the license to the ADAC GT Masters series and has a big selection of GT3 machinery. Assetto Corsa doesn't have any official series support, but if you want GT3, you got it. Even rFactor 2 has one GT3 car, the Chevy Camaro, and that's not even getting into the user-created GT3 mods for the moddable sims. Regardless of what opinion you have of the quality of drivers and some online racers using these cars, the writing's on the wall. GT3 is the most widespread single category of motorsport on the planet, real or sim. Racing media has traditionally served as a snapshot of what motorsport and car culture's zeitgeist has been at the time of their production. The films Grand Prix and Le Mans, the 60s and 70s, the freedom and danger and renegade charm, and Steve McQueen. You think the 90s, you think the Super Touring era, you think the Toka Touring Car series. The turn of the millennium to the mid-2000s was defined by interest in street racing and modified cars, Need for Speed Underground, The Fast and the Furious, and Juiced. But for today's generation of sim racing games, where the kinds of cars offered for the average Joe to play pretend with are effectively offered as is within minimal framework, racers often being left to their own devices, we need to instead turn to what people are actively choosing to race online to see what is in amongst fans and wannabe racing drivers. And right now, in the international scene, GT3 is definitely in. The question of why that is can be answered by a combination of factors that have made the real GT3 scene as big as it is, and how those factors translate to sim racing. The whole point of GT3 is that it is manufacturer-driven, customer-focused, and cheap. Comparatively. A few €100,000 donation to the involved manufacturer of your choice can get you a race-ready car, the tools to modify its setup, an instruction manual, and access to repair and maintenance services direct from the manufacturer. The FIA and SRO both impose strict balance of performance standards to ensure, in theory, that any car built to the regulations can be competitive without being dominant, while still allowing loads of freedom in terms of dimensions and body styles. This has resulted in a shit ton of different types of cars racing with full support from many manufacturers. Seeing so many different cars out there is super appealing to fans, and if you're a car person already, which a lot of us undoubtedly are, you can easily find a manufacturer to rally behind and support if you're that way inclined. They have to be based on a road-going machine too. It has to be mass-produced, no one-offs here. As a result, many of these cars are in the upper level of the Goldilocks zone of prestige versus accessibility. The Audi R8, Mercedes-AMG GT, Ferrari 488, Bentley Continental, etc. These cars are common enough that, depending on where you live, you stand a fair chance of seeing them out on the road at some point. But they're expensive and rare enough that it's an event when you do. I see one of these things cruising on the highway, I think, that car is cool. By extension, the person driving that car must also be cool. And I remember that moment for the rest of the week. I also remember that if I work hard enough and save up enough, make the right investments here and there, I may be able to have one of my own someday. That can be me! LaFerrari, the McLaren P1, or the Porsche 918, to me represent the unattainable, the most specialized possession for the most specialized of professions, out of reach, out of sight, out of mind. A BMW M6, an Audi R8, or a Porsche 911, on the other hand? Just accessible enough. Maybe they will still remain in my fantasies, but the possibility of owning one being a reality is there, and that keeps our interest. It keeps us hungry. We see the GT3 versions of those cars on the track and we think that's out there and cool, but it's still achievable. Any of us can do that. By comparison, touring cars, today at least, are practically bread and butter. Not suggesting that that's a bad thing. They're safe, they're familiar, they're well within the reach of accessibility, for the most part. On the other end of the scale, an LMP1 machine is in the stratosphere. It knocks your socks off with its high-tech, space-age looks and speed, but it's kind of beyond the realm of recognition as a car that regular people can get a taste of, despite how applicable its technology may be to the road. GT3 cars combine the best of both extremes. They are familiar enough, but also exotic enough to capture the imagination and interest of just about everyone. And the global reach of the category cannot be glossed over. Thanks to this recipe for success, there are series on every continent except Antarctica that use GT3 cars. The knock-on effect for racing games and sim racing is that people want to drive these things, full stop. We want to have a go. We want to see what it's like. So it naturally follows that through such great exposure to the category, fans are going to want to engage with it more by playing games featuring those cars. This has the unfortunate side effect of attracting online drivers that may need a bit more seat time, to be polite. But hey, people are going to go where the people are congregating and do what the people are interested in doing, and the more drivers there are racing something online, the more likely it is that a greater proportion of those drivers are going to be dangerous or disrespectful on track. That's just the nature of things. In fact, I reckon that if online sim racing as it is today were around in the late 1980s, I could almost guarantee that the most raced and most maligned cars would be Group A touring cars, because again, they're almost everywhere. Series in countries all over the world adopted the regulations and you could see a huge variety of cars. It's pretty much the same as with GT3 today. I posit that if Group A was GT3 level popular in online racing, you'd likely see the same low driving standards and consequently the same snark directed towards it by its detractors. GT3, however, has one thing that Group A did not. Total, and I mean inbuilt, provision for the gentleman racer. These cars in real life are designed so that anyone can drive them from the outset. Oh, what's that? You have money and a racing license? Welcome aboard! Paddle shifters, traction control, anti-lock brakes. You could be a complete novice and probably get these things around a track without binning it if you're not a complete dumbass. It's much more palatable for the gentleman racer than GT1s and prototypes ever were, that's for sure. And this translates over to racing games as well. Regardless of your opinions on which sim has the most realistic physics, which by now I've realized is just a pointless circular argument that wastes time and energy. It's far and away the case that in any sim that has GT3 cars, they are among the easiest to drive, at least relative to the other cars in that specific sim. Going fast, as always, is where it gets difficult, but be it iRacing, R-Factor 2, Race Room, or Assetto Corsa, you can be mildly competent and jump in and start doing laps at a consistent, if slow, pace and not have many issues. GT3 cars are a popular choice in online racing because they don't immediately dump you on your ass like, for instance,
a 60s F1 car.
The gradual move in sim racing as a whole towards cars being easier to drive, which, depending on who you ask, is more reflective of real-life race cars, is evident in its most obvious form with the plethora of GT3 cars available to race in many sims. GT3s are easy enough to drive in sims that it's also easy to become overconfident in the car's abilities and in one's own abilities. They attract sim racers of all skill levels, for better or for worse. And that, I think, ties back to the points I made earlier. For better or for worse, through a combination of popular appeal, money, and good old-fashioned herd mentality, GT3 is the category to race in real life and on your favourite sims. At least, right now, it is. Regulations and the forms that categories take has changed, morphed, come and gone through the years in all disciplines of motorsport, and will continue to do so, often in response to how the rules are bent by competitors looking for an edge, but also in response to the next recession, the next war, the next change to government subsidies to automakers, the next generation of engineers and what their skills are in demand for, the next shift in focus of what a greater purpose of motorsport could be. Hell, maybe even the next pop culture sensibilities. There is always talk of what the fans want, after all. GT3 has now been around for about 12 years, and I don't think you'll find many disagreeing that we're in a golden age for GT racing right now, thanks to the category and the way it was set up in 2005. But what's going to happen in the next 12 years is the question I'm asking myself. What's next? What will GT3 eventually become? How will it change? How will it end? And for those of us who like to play pretend on our computers, how long will this form of racing hold such unifying power over us? I think we'll just have to wait for the world at large to give us the answer. Thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate your viewership. I'm SouthPawRacer. I'm a sim racer. I make videos about that and other stuff, and I will see you at the first corner. Goodbye.